Kick Fund is the venture capital firm that invests in Switzerland's best deep tech startups right after they graduate from the Venture Kick competition. Kick Fund has the largest and most diversified deep tech portfolio in the country, which makes it practically an index fund. For startup founders, Kick Fund is the easiest VC they'll work with.
What we are able to do is really to correct a typo in the DNA, right, that leads to a potentially fatal disease. We're really able to completely rewrite the future of the patients.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating. And now, here's your host, Sylvain.
Vincent, a very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you as a guest today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for your interest and for inviting me.
We have plenty of stuff to talk about.
Sure.
You are the CEO and co-founder of Nerai Bioscience, pushing genome editing forward to real-world impact. That's sort of your one-sentence punchline. But before we actually talk about what you are building today, you have built and successfully exited a company before. Can you take us back to that exit when you said, okay, it's all done, but now I'm not done. I want to continue and build my next company?
Yeah, sure. Yes, of course. It was a success. We celebrated as a success, of course. And it really showed me that we can build value. And I think, of course, this is great for us, for investors, for the patients eventually. Yes. But it also showed us how much unmet need there still is in the field of medical science. And we were evolving into rare disease space. And I think in the rare disease space, unmet need is where it is the highest, right? And that really stuck with me, right? There is still so much we can do, and I think that was the main motivation for me to jump again into doing a new adventure again. So we were evolving into rare disease, right? And I think that rare disease is really where this gap, this unmet medical need is the highest. And it really is crazy, right? There is 10,000 rare disease that we know of, more that we don't know of course, right? Mm-hmm. Not yet. And they affect as a whole 1 every 10 patients. And this is quite large, right, as a whole. If we compare and relate that to diseases that we know better of, that are more well-known, such as breast cancer, we have twice as much risk to be affected by a rare disease than by breast cancer. And what is striking is that really investment into such rare or small population really doesn't align with the way that we build a medicine currently, right? The path to drug development. And as a result of that, 95% of these rare diseases don't have a approved treatment to help these patients. And this is wrong, right? And I think we should really change this paradigm. And I think today we have the tools to do it. And that's exactly why we are now fighting, we're now developing better tools for rare diseases, because we truly believe that no disease should be too rare to be treated.
I love that. So there's plenty more work to be done for humanity in that sense, that you said, hey, I'm not done yet. I have to continue building. And I wonder, with your experience from the successful company exit that you had before, what were some of the key learnings where you said, oh, this I want to do differently, or this one thing I want to completely avoid? Because as a second-time entrepreneur, so to speak, you already probably have a lot of learnings and things that you do differently now in the current company.
No, of course there is a lot of learnings, of course, right? That's the journey of a first-time entrepreneur. It's basically a learning journey. And yes, I think one of the first lesson was all about translatability. When I started at least, I didn't really know what these terms mean. Medical translation, probably had to Google it at one point. But really that is key. And this translation is what I now try to bring into this new adventure, really like building from day one with a translational thinking in mind, right? And I'll always remember one of my first meeting with, one of the medical diva or medical key opinion leader. Was in his office, and basically, he was congratulating us on the technology, saying that, okay, yeah, you have a fantastic technology that has the potential to help patients, but now we need to work together on making this technology a product. And I think this distinction between technology and product is very important, right? And it's often, or at least in my case, in the very beginning, was a bit underestimated and not as clear as it is now. When you start a company or when you invest in a company, basically the idea is about 10%, right? And 90% comes from the execution, the translation, and all the steps on the way to make this technology true product that have impact for the patients.
Yeah, to make it work, basically.
Yes, to make it work, yeah.
And I wonder, for you as a second-time entrepreneur, does it make you more calm or more stressed? Because we hear both sides. We hear people that say, oh, I was a bit naive because I didn't know what could go wrong or how difficult it is. So that kept me going. And now with everything that you know all of that stuff. So sometimes it can also be harder and more difficult to then say, do I really want to go through all that pain and the ups and downs again? So are you more calm now, or are you more stressed being a second-time founder?
Well, I think neither, right? I think this is more personality traits or characters, but what I'm more is confident, right? I think this is the better word.
I like that.
Confident into what I do, into what we do now, and confident in knowing how to do what needs to be done later to make this technology a product and to deliver impact for patients, right?
I like that.
But that doesn't remove the fact that the journey is hard, and the journey was hard, and the journey is hard now, and the journey to come will be hard, right? It is a lot of work, and it is a lot of stress, but truly doing it for the second time, I think, create confidence. Yeah.
Absolutely. And let's talk about Nerai now. When you actually sort of identified the problem, take us back to this moment when you and your co-founders sort of said, hey, genome editing doesn't just need incremental improvements, it actually needs a radically new approach. How did that come about?
Yes, that's a great question. So, I'm not from the field of genome editing to start with, right? And I will let that to my co-founders. We are 5 co-founders in total, and they're all pioneer into genome editing, into the translation of genome editor, molecular biology, as well as artificial intelligence as well, right? So I think the fit in between us was really important, and I think this really will make Nerai a success. But to come back to your question, why genome editing and why now? And I think genome editing and CRISPR really paved the way for what we experience now as a genetic engineering medical breakthrough or new paths to treatments, to patients, to the way we see patients and their disease and the way we can treat them, right? But what we saw as well is that the original wild type CRISPR genome editor was good, right? But was not perfect, of course, right? It was lacking targetability, it was lacking specificity and modularity as well. Typically, the first CRISPR that was discovered can only target about 20% of the disease-causing mutation, leaving 80% of the mutation behind. And this really doesn't go towards scaling up rare disease and providing treatments for most of the rare disease, right? And also this tool and other new tools that came later, being more promiscuous, are also at risk of potentially altering the DNA where it shouldn't be edited or altered, right? And, although, of course, they're all fully characterized and safe when developed as medicine, right? It still pose a question about the long-term ethics of such potential edits. And therefore, what we really focused on was to devise and to create an engine, a mechanism to design new enzymes that are more personalized and more specific to really make sure that they work where they should work and are not affecting other parts of the DNA. So this real precision was key, right, for the safety of the patient, but also to make them modular in a way that they can now access more disease, right, and not just the 20%, but really like accessing as many diseases as possible, because again, we don't want to leave mutations behind.
What you're describing, it sounds like an incredible breakthrough, but also almost too good to be true.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it is. It is very nice, and of course, we're not the only one in evolving in this field, right? In developing these such technologies. And as I mentioned, the first CRISPR editor was a breakthrough, was actually the first step towards this revolution. But I think the real breakthrough now is how to scale them, how to make them applicable to more mutation, how to reuse them and really platformize the whole thing, right, in order to be able to deliver more impact to more patients and make really genome editing more inclusive.
And in your space, what you're building usually requires not only a lot of patience, but actually also quite some capital to pull through and to execute. How do you sort of stay course, when things are going with the ups and downs that every startup sees, but in your space, it probably takes extra long until you go through the trials and you actually see the results of your work. How do you manage that as a founder? Because I imagine that to also be a challenge with the long timelines and the high necessity for investment.
Yes, I think, when you are working on something that truly matters, well, of course, time is of essence and you want to go as fast as possible, right? But you also understand and are honest in the way that, yes, it will take time, right, until we can deliver something that works and that are safe for the patients. We're not developing a new, e-commerce app, right? So timelines in developing cures for patient or potential cure for patient tend to be a bit longer, right?
Slightly.
but yeah, I think here, speaking of time and timeline, I think it's really not down to taking shortcut, but it's really how to plan and design experiment in a way that the data can be generated faster. And this is all about engineering. And really today, with the tool that we have in hands, biology can be engineered, right? And this is typically the case for genome editing technology. I think for the first time, we really shifted the problem from biology to an engineering problem. An engineering problem can be solved, they can be scaled, right, as well, and therefore that allows us to work on building a platform that allows us to run editors through it in order to rapidly create the best possible option for a particular mutation and then translate it rapidly into patients. And I think this system of thoughts, we're not building a product anymore, we're really building a process of translation from engineering to patient. This process is bringing a lot of actors and stakeholders align. And I think for the first time, we really see a really strong alignment between all these key stakeholders, from the technology providers, the ones that are manufacturing the products for us, the ones that are manufacturing the capsules, right, that will deliver the product into the patient at the right location, as well as the regulators, right? Over the past few months, over the past few months, the regulator really have shifted the way in acknowledging that there is an urgency into being able to target more rare disease and deliver impact for these patients. And therefore, they are fully on board on creating this process that if we go through, we can accelerate and expedite the development safely, the development of products for rare disease patients. So we have an alignment between the technology providers, the regulators, the patients and their caregivers as well, which are fully motivated to help us developing such new technologies and advanced medicines. So yeah, I think through that, we can have timelines which make sense in a cost-efficient way.
That's really good to hear. At the same time, that also brings up the question of focus, because I imagine with your technology, you could do so many great things. How do you decide what to focus on?
Yeah, well, that's a key question, right? And it's a key question that, all the companies in our space facing, of course. And so, yeah, being maybe not the first player, but being as, a second wave of player in this space with, potentially what we hope is better tools, we can really observe and learn about, the path that others have taken and learn from, successes and mistakes that have been done before, and therefore carefully select, right, the way that we want to proceed. And what we really selected is this modularity, right? We really want to create a scalable way of delivering treatments for these rare disease patients. So we are creating editors that can be reused, and once they will be demonstrated as safe and efficient in one indication, typically we can easily shift this one editor to another indication, because the capsule I was mentioning before will be the same, the target organ will be the same, the backbone of the genome editor is the same. All we need to change basically is a very little portion of it, which is basically the GPS of this editor that targets the desired mutations, right? And therefore, by building editors in a modular way to start with, we can really then compound these different indications, these different diseases, and focus on the scalability. And I think these types of diseases are still left untreated and not as a single disease being really interesting for commercial development, right? It's only when you pack them together and when you have a modular approach that it does make sense, right? And this is how we can differentiate ourselves from the other pioneers in these fields, which have all looked at more common and prevalent disease and are all fighting and competing between each other on 5 or 6 most common targets. But there are still 9,994 other rare diseases that are out there and that don't benefit from any treatment. And if we combine them together, if we have a cost-efficient way to be able to target them with similar product, then it becomes very commercially interesting as well, right? And this is the way forward for developing therapy that matters.
And you really become the platform that way, to a certain degree, right?
So yes, we did start by creating a platform. Again, back to how to streamline timelines, we need to build and engineer the way that we create our product in a way that it makes things possible rapidly for more than just one product, right? So we did build this fantastic platform. I think it's probably one of the most sophisticated CRISPR engineering platform available to date, right? We are combining wet lab directed evolution in high throughput with high throughput characterization as well. So we can really create libraries of editors, test them against libraries of thousands of different mutations, and all of that creates very high quality data with which we then created AI model to help us inform the starting position of the evolution. So it's a very nice and sophisticated platform that accelerate and optimize the performance and the characteristic of the editor each time we run it. And yeah, we built this platform, and we are now integrating in our company the results of this platform, both vertically by creating our own medicines, by, as I mentioned, selecting the indication in which we want to be active, but we also want to value this platform and use this platform horizontally by creating partnerships, strong, long-standing alliance with biopharmaceutical partners, which either, are developing their own tool and will benefit from a little boost, through the platform that we created, a little bit of engineering into their compounds, or that have a target disease in mind, right? And that will need a best-in-class genome editor to access this target. Yep. And through this horizontal deployment of the platform, then we can really create value, learn a lot more, and that fits well with our core indications that we develop ourselves, right?
In the end, are the pharma companies your customers, or who do you sell your solution, your platform to?
We do all that for the patients, of course, right? I mean, when you are into such sometimes devastating disease and rare disease, often are genetic and also affecting children, right? Mm-hmm. And you really want to do good for these patients. So these are our customers. And of course, the caregivers, the key opinion leaders that are using the products are our customers as well, right? But yeah, in a way as well, we stand on shoulders of giants, right? Which have done that before, which know how to develop drugs in a good way. We also want and aim to partner with these biopharmaceutical companies, which are as well our customers, right?
Makes sense. And if you look at genome editing, it had a moment about 2 years ago. There were a lot of headlines, funding, maybe some people even call it hype. So now, with you being inside this hype or this bubble, so to speak, is the hype still there, or has it sort of declined a bit and is it over? What would you say?
It's a very good point. And yes, a lot of headlines 2 years ago, and a lot of fundings went into this field, and of course a lot of hype. Hype is not necessarily, very healthy, right? Mm-hmm. And I think now hype is over, but it's a good thing. I think after the hype era becomes the engineering era, the construction era, the scalability era, right? And yeah, this is where we are now. We're moving away from PowerPoint slide about CRISPR into entering the hospital and delivering CRISPR at the patient's bedside. And this is more sustainable for the future.
That makes sense. That's a good development in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And to actually make that step happen, of course, there are also regulations that you need to follow. Some people complain about regulation. They say it's so difficult, it's so time-consuming. Others see it sort of a defensibility, because if you go through a complicated regulatory process, it also sort of defends you from having 10 competitors entering at the same time. How do you look at regulation?
Yeah, it's a very good point, because it's very timely, right? And right now, regulators, we really see them more as enablers and accelerators and sparks, rather than policemen. And, listening and discussing with my peers, which are ahead and which have already genome editing product or advanced therapy product in the clinic, they all praise how much the discussions with the regulators today, at least in this field, feels more like a partnership than an exam, right?
Nice.
And I think this is really the way that in our field we are moving forward, being a team and really creating a partnership together with the regulator to understand what we need to do and how we can develop, platformize, and bring impact to patients in a cost-efficient way the fastest as possible.
Makes sense. And to do so, you of course also need capital. How do you think about the capital allocation? Because you probably have investors aboard, right, to finance the operations and the development. How does that work with you, and also with your background of already having built and successfully exited a company?
Well, yes, drug development is expensive, of course. So we require a lot of funding, right? But because we are into this rare disease space, the funding is probably 1/10 or even less than what conventional drug will require, right, to access a more prevalent patient population. So here it makes sense for investors as well, because the upfront capital need is very little, and the return on investment, or at least the time to benefit from a return on investment, is very short, right? And I think this is a story that is appealing to the investor, especially now that we are well aligned with regulators, that typically the FDA and also the EMA and Swissmedic as well, right, are providing a lot of incentives and acceleration pathway for such products. And that plays well with what we are building, typically this modularity approach, right? Being able to develop one best-in-class editor that can then be reused into different indications, targeting different mutation, right? And this is today a possibility at the FDA, and that was not the case last year, and it came really, in the last trimester of the year, right? So it's very new.
Amazing.
And therefore we see this regain interest as well in the investors community, because now we know that the path is possible, and we know that compounding these different indication makes it commercially compelling as well. But in the space of rare disease and genome editing, and especially coming from the US, there has been a lot of philanthropy as well, right? And I think the technology we're developing are very important technology that can really truly bring impact to patients very rapidly. I mean, they are life-changing, right? What we are able to do is really to correct typo in the DNA, right, that leads to a potentially fatal disease, often affecting children, as I mentioned. And what we are able to do is to correct that typo and turn the DNA back to a healthy stage even before the symptoms arise, right? So we're really able to completely rewrite the future of the patients and provide them with a life where without that they would be potentially listed on the organ transplant list in the first year of their life. So very dramatic and severe disorders. And therefore we can really have a massive impact on these patients' life and on the life of their family as well. So that fits very well with philanthropy, right? And we will try as well to go that route, and with business angels and philanthropists as well. And I think that is a very nice combination together with the venture capitalists for financing these adventures.
Now I know even more why you get up in the morning. This is incredible, the impact that you and the whole company are having. Nevertheless, if you look at the impact, right, and having VC investors aboard, sometimes that can be a bit of a conflict of interest, I would say, because the VCs might say, hey, we want to have an exit at one point, but maybe instead of selling to a big pharma company, you could have even a bigger impact by continuing your path on your own. How do you balance that sort of financial impact and the patient impact?
Yeah, I think there are plenty of ways to provide return on investment, right? And the exit is one, but there is many other different opportunities for the investor that needs the exit to actually recover its investment. And our aim is really to build a sustained company, to build a company that can grow and that can continuously deliver impact for patients today and in the future. And therefore, these products, when they are mature enough, we will be able to sell them to biopharmaceutical company that will then be active into their commercialization. That it's a model that has worked in the space, and by doing these asset sales, then we can also provide a return to the shareholders as well. Or there is the listing on the market as well, exactly, which is a sort of exit which also can benefit the shareholders stakeholders as well. So there's many ways, right? And yeah, the important is to, again, align and make sure that, there is no misalignment, misunderstanding into where the company is going and into what are the opportunities, right, for each party's interests.
So there are opportunities to generate liquidity for your investors without compromising on your mission, basically.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Very good. And I wonder, where do you want to take this? Like, is this something where you say, I will dedicate the next 10, 20, 25 years of my life to this, to make this as big and as impactful as possible? Or what is sort of your long-term plan with the company?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I really think that, we are right now in a turning point for the medicine, and genome editing is just at the very beginning and will become more and more available, more and more useful and accepted as well. So we really want to be a global player into delivering the best tools for patients, for practitioners that are using genome editing, right? And eventually genome editing might be just a procedure, right, that we would do in the hospital, right? And might access more and more mutations, which, might be less severe after having gained a lot of experience into the tools, with the tools in our hands, right? And therefore the company Nerai really has the potential to grow and to really be an established player, European based for once, right? Because all the other company, or most of the other company, will be typically based in the US and China as well. There's a huge competition coming from there. Wow. But I think we really have the capacity to also be one of these global players with the platform we have, with the team we have, with the technologies we have, in order to be developing a sustainable company.
I love that. We certainly do need that here in Europe. So thank you for building out of here. And I wonder, what are the immediate next milestones, and where do you actually stand today to look a bit into the near future?
Yeah, so the next milestone is really to be able to translate our first editors, right, as close to patient as possible, right? And that will come in the next 2 years. And of course, for that, we need capital. So fundraising will be a topic of this year, but also continuously generating new data is very important. So we now have, for the first time that we know, the animal model that we can use for demonstrating the efficacy of our editor into the indication that we selected, the first indication that we selected, and to really be able to show that we can reverse the phenotype and rescue this animal model. And with that, then this is the really first and most important step towards the translation of this editor to patients. Hopefully we can complete all of that this year and start working on the regulatory studies that needs to be completed before moving into the clinic, and by the end of next year potentially being closer to the patients. Yeah.
Amazing. You have a lot of work, but also very exciting times ahead of you.
Yeah, it's very exciting indeed. Yeah,
I imagine. To wrap up, Vincent, we also have some rapid fire questions for you. So I give you either a short question or different options to choose from, and ideally you have to answer in one sentence. It's a challenge.
I'll try.
You ready?
Yeah.
Let's see. What is your favorite Swiss dish or drink?
My favorite dish is the saucisse au chou and the papé vaudois.
Nice. I'm not sure if everyone knows what they are.
It's delicious. It's a sausage with coal in it, right? And the papé vaudois is a mix of potatoes and leeks and cream. It's really, really nice. It's coming from Waadtland, yeah.
Makes sense. And if you had to choose to build sort of in biotech, Zurich or Basel?
Well, Zurich is amazing. I mean, just because of the city. But I think what is great about it is that it's very close to Basel. So yeah, I don't think there is a competition there. I think we're more like in a partnership way.
Good mix of both in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And why is Switzerland the right place for you to build your company?
Switzerland is a very, very mature ecosystem for startup, and in terms of innovation, in terms of financing the innovation, supporting this innovation, I think we cannot find a better place.
And if you look at the deep tech race that is going on all around the world at the moment, who will win it? Switzerland, the US, or China that you mentioned before?
I think the US are pretty on the forefront right now, right? But that doesn't mean that we should quit, right?
I agree. The question is, will they stay there, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you for challenging that.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.